Hello! Today we will be discussing Word of God and sort of related Death of the Author. So, first of all, I need to define these things. So the Word of God is sort of what the author says, because, in the context of this work, the author is God. So what they say goes. By contrast, Death of the Author is this postmodern concept that every interpretation of the work is valid. It doesn't matter if you're the author, the publisher, or a person who picked it up 2 days ago and just fell in love with it. There's no final say on what anything is and what anything means, and you're free to give your own interpretations of what those are. So, for example, let's just say, Word of God would be like J.K. Rowling, after Harry Potter's been finished, going and writing stuff on Pottermore. Not technically Fantastic Beasts, because that is part of the series. Word of God specifically refers to things outside the canon and work, which are considered canon because it came from the author. An example of Death of the Author would be what came from postmodernism in the whole. I'm not going to go into that side of it, but Death of the Author would, for example, be that really weird ass story about Ash having hit his head and being in a coma all of the thing, which is why he doesn't get old, and all these other weird ass theories that are really interesting, but on the other hand probably aren't true because holy crap, the author is not going for that angle, but that kind of thing. So in this video, I'm not gonna discuss anything that's contentious. I'm gonna leave the discussions about where Brockton Bay actually is on the U.S. coast, and the densities of endbringers and how that makes any sense at all. I'm gonna leave that to people who know what they're talking about, and I'm just gonna sort of given my 2 cents about like just Word of God and Death of the Author. And the reason I'm doing this is because in the community right now, there's a sort of discussion about the value of Word of God, because for the Worm family, we're pretty blessed in the fact that Wildbow is very involved, and you can often find him on the IRC chat or in Reddit on Space Battles, just telling people information about interesting stuff about Worm. So that's quite useful. And there's also the other stuff he's done that isn't technically Worm, and is debatably canon by default, like PRT quests, which introduce stuff like the Youth Guard, very contentious on its own, and other stuff like that. So, sort of as a basic pro and con pros list of Word of God and Death of the Author. For Word of God, it's pretty simple. You get extra details that you get to play with. It's stuff that you can trust. It's pretty much stuff you can count as canon, and you can just put it in and it should just be good. By comparison, Death of the Author allows for much freer, out there theories and ideas and interpretations about characters and like all this other stuff, and it is quite good, and it allows you to sort of play with it a lot more and just look at it in a very critical lens to try and find a new spin on it. Like Brian's motivation and like his characterization and stuff like that. There's a lot of interesting things you can put out when in canon Brian seems to be one step up from a cardboard cutout puppeted by a guy with strings. So, like, as much as the dude is nice, he's just not very well fleshed out past a certain point. That aside. Yeah, Death of the Author means you get a lot of interesting theories and like you get a lot of interesting discussion. So where I stand on the matter personally, it depends what you're using it for. Like when it comes to first debates, when it comes to like discussion and arguments about who exactly is stronger, who would win in this situation, Word of God. Word of God, hands down, is the most important thing you should use because it's another weapon in your arsenal of evidence. Conversely, it makes it interesting because then they can bring out things you didn't know before. When it comes to writing a story or having an interpretation or a theory about or whatever, I would personally pick and choose. Depends on what suits the purposes of your work. You can just say, it's an alternate universe where this doesn't happen or X, Y, and Z isn't true, or just, say I'm not going to follow this because I don't think it works for the purposes of my story, or you can just say I don't like it because it feels stupid. That's completely fine. That's the beauty of Death of the Author. So yeah, it's a rather nuanced question, and I find that to be a good balance between the two. It's also quite interesting because Word of God lets you interact with the author a lot more because they're interacting with the fandom, and that's led to a few really interesting questions, including what exactly Parian's power is that lets her beat Behemoth. Which, if you're not sure of it, is something that Wildbow has definitely stated, has given hints about, and then summarily shot down every single theory as incorrect. So that's been a mystery in the fandom that's been going on for a while, and it's a nice sort of marrying of Word of God, and Death of the Author, because you get your own interpretations and you just get to riff off that. In summary, both are good. Don't take anything too seriously. They're good for their own purposes. I'll see you guys next week.